So we are rounding up market structure and concentration ratio. So today we're going into competition and market structure. So when we talk about competition and the market structure, the market structure is just about the characteristics, the features in the market that make certain firms or different firms to behave in the way they behave. So in the market structure, we have different type of sector in the business. We have the primary sector, the secondary sector, the tertiary sector. So each sector we have different market structure. So the different market structure they will have will be based on the level or the extent of their competition. So we're going to start with the first one. So we have the perfect competition. Why do we call it a perfect competition? We call it a perfect competition because it exists where a large number of firms, each producing a homogeneous good, that means similar products in the industry. None of the firm is large enough to have a direct impact on other firm or on the market price of the goods. That means there's no interdependence. Each firm is independent in a perfect competition. Why? Because there are large numbers of firms that can decide whatever they want to do. So whatever your decision is does not have any direct relationship or impact on others. So most of the time, prices are, how do I put it? Prices are mostly from consumers. They are price makers, they are price takers because prices are mostly competitive pricing. And there's always entry and exit, which is there's no barriers to. Do you understand?
Yes.
So call it a perfect competition because one, they are mostly price takers. There's free entry and exit into that market. Then that takes us to monopolistic. For a monopolistic competition, it exists where there are large numbers of firms, each producing a differentiated product. The firms have some control over the price. They charge for their own product. There's freedom of exit and exit in the industry too. So the similarity between monopolistic competition and the perfect competition is that they both have free entry and exit. But the difference between a monopolistic competition and a perfect competition is that in a monopolistic competition, you can decide the price you want to charge because you are producing a product that is much different from your competitors. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
Example of a monopolistic is maybe the schools we have here. We have the Canadian International School, which has different curriculum to IKS, which have different curriculum to maybe SMS and ISM. They have different curriculum. So they can be considered as monopolistic competition. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
Then the third one, oligopoly. When we talk about oligopoly, we're talking about a market that exists where there may be many firms in the industry, but a few large firms dominate and produce majority of the output. Firms are interdependent and they make decisions taking into consideration what the behaviors of competitors are. So here, oligopoly, we have few large firms dominating that industry. There are large firms, there are more firms in that industry, but few of them dominate the industry. And in this situation, they are always, they always put into consideration the behavior of their competitors. So they don't just make decisions. They make decisions put into consideration the impact on their competitors. I think oligopoly is clear. And the next one is monopoly. Are you there? Are you there, please?
Yes.
Okay. For monopoly, it exists where there is only one firm in the industry. High barriers to entry make it impossible for new firms to enter. So for monopoly, it's a market that is dominated by a firm. So that means a firm makes that industry. So
One firm.
A firm, yeah, one firm, yeah. So it means there's barrier to entry and exit. That makes it difficult for new firms to come into that industry. I think the point is clear there.
Yes.
So that takes us to concentration, market concentration. Are you there?
Yeah.
So for market concentration, it refers to the extent to which a market is dominated by a small number of large firms. So we call it market concentration because few numbers of large firms dominate that market. So that's why it's market concentration. So it measures how much a market sale or production are controlled by the largest firm in that industry. So it's a market concentration because we are trying to measure how much the few large firms are dominating in terms of what they produce or what they sell. So what are the key aspects of market concentration? I wrote them here. One, dominance by few. So there's market concentration if because it focuses on the degree to which few large firms are dominating that industry. That's dominance. So I wrote here, it focuses on the degree to which a small number of firms control a large portion of the market. So the market is there, it's big, but few large firms are dominating that market.
Yeah.
Two, the impact on competition. High concentration can stifle competition. That means with high concentration, if we have high concentration ratio, it simply means there's low competition in that market. So here I wrote high concentration rate can stifle competition, potentially leading to higher prices, lower quality products, and reduced innovation. A market that has a high concentration ratio simply means there's lack of competition in that market. And if there's lack of competition, prices are expected to rise, quality are expected to fall because nobody is competing with anyone. And also, there will be lack of innovation because innovation comes if there is competition. You want to be efficient, you want to produce new products so that you can, steal customers from your competitors. But if you are already dominating, so there's no incentive for that firm that is dominating to innovate, to come up with new products. So customers are always vulnerable at that situation. That's another aspect that we have to put into consideration when we're talking about market concentration. And the regulatory implication. Regulatory bodies often monitor market concentration to prevent anti-competitive practices and mergers that could lead to excessive dominance by a firm. So government, regulatory bodies, they always monitor what happens in such markets. Because if they don't, the market will be dominated and it might bring about anti-competitive practices. Do you understand? Do you understand, please?
Yes.
Any question about that?
No.
So that's about market concentration. Now we're going to concentration ratio. So for concentration ratio, we call it concentration ratio because it's an economic indicator that measures the dominance of certain firms in that industry in terms of their market share. So here I wrote, it is an economic indicator that measures the dominance of a few firms within a specific market. It is calculated by summing the market share of the largest firm in an industry. So the concentration ratio itself, the CR, measures the dominance of firms in that industry. So what they do is they put together the 4 largest firms in that market or the first 8 largest firms in that market. They sum their market share together, they divide it with the total market sale in that industry. It's different from market share. For market share, it is the brand sale divided by the market sale, the total market sale multiplied by 100. But when it comes to concentration ratio, it is the total sale of certain firms, big firms in that market, divided by the total sales in that market multiplied by 100. So we're going to have either a low concentration ratio, a high concentration ratio, or 100% concentration ratio. Are you with me, please?
Yes.
So I go, it is calculated by summing the market share of the largest firm in an industry. A high concentration ratio suggests lack of competition, while a low concentration ratio suggests a more competitive market. So the formula is the total sales of N firms in the industry divided by the total sales of all firms in the industry multiplied by 100. So when we talk about the end firms, we're talking about the few large firms dominating in the industry, their market share, divided by the total market sale in that industry multiplied by 100. Are you with me?
Yes.
Great. So how do we calculate it? So for the calculation I wrote, the most common concentration ratio are the CR4, which is for 4-firm concentration ratio, and the CR8, which is the 8-firm concentration ratio, which represents the combined market share of the top 4 or top 8, respectively. So what is the interpretation of, when you calculate the CR, what are the interpretation? 1, a low concentration ratio, which is, for example, below 40%. If you have a low concentration ratio, which is below 40%, it simply means that there's more competition in that market. So that means there are many players in that market. So there's no dominance in that market. That's a low concentration ratio. Then we have a high concentration ratio for probably above 60%. If we have a high concentration ratio above 60%, it simply means that there's less competition in that market. And it's an indicator that the market is potentially an oligopoly or even a monopoly. And the last one is a concentration ratio of 100%, which I said earlier. If the CR is 100%, it simply means the market is what? Is a complete monopoly, a pure monopoly. Any question about that?
No.
So that is the That is the interpretation. Then what are the advantages of concentration ratio? Number one, simplicity. It is easy to calculate because it's just about putting together the largest firms, the market share of the largest firms divided by the total market sale multiplied by 100. So it's easy to calculate. I think the first advantage is clear.
Yes.
Two, data availability. Calculating the CR typically requires readily available market share. So we won't talk about calculating CR without understanding the market share. So it means those that need to calculate the CR would have a ready-made data that will help them to calculate the CR. Then what are the limitations or the problems or setbacks of concentration ratio? The first one, oversimplification. What does oversimplification mean? It simply means that we concentrate mostly on the few large firms dominating. We don't think about other firms in that market. So here I wrote, oversimplification. It only considers the largest firms and ignore competitive landscape of smaller players. When you talk about few large firms, we want to talk about the four firm dominating or the 8 firms dominating. Maybe there's a 9th one, maybe there's a 5th one that is always closer to them, but it won't be considered. So that means we're not putting into consideration some of those firms that might as well be part of the large firms. 2, ignores market dynamics. And when we talk about market dynamics, we're simply talking about the potential threats in that market, the potential competitors in that market. We don't put them into consideration. So here I wrote, the CR doesn't put into consideration potential competition from new entrants or the contestability of the market. And when we talk about market contestability, we're simply talking about the ease at which new firms can, come into that market. Can new firms compete with large firms in that market or not? Because if new firms can compete with large firms in that market, that means the concentration ratio is likely to fall. But when we are calculating the CR, we don't put into consideration new entrants and their potential threats their potential competitiveness with the large firms. I think the point is clear.
Yeah.
And the last one, it doesn't indicate market power distribution. Here we said we're talking about the first 4 firms, the sum of their market share. We're not talking about each one at a time. So that means we won't know if they have even distribution in terms of market share or not. This firm might have 40%, the other one might have 30%, the next one might have 25%. They don't have the same. The market concentration ratio would not show us that it is evenly distributed or not. So here I wrote, does it indicate market power distribution? A high CR doesn't specify if the market share is evenly distributed among the largest firm or dominated by 1 or 2. Because we don't do 2 firm CR. We do 4 firm CR or 8 firm CR, which simply means the first 4 are going to be the largest in the industry, or the first 8. And that does not indicate if 1 is dominating or 2. Do you get the point here?
Yeah.
The CR calculates for the top firms, not each firm that is dominating. So that's also a problem because you won't know the firm that is mostly dominating in that market. So that ends market concentration and market concentration ratio and market structure. Any question?
No.
Thank you.